The alarm screamed through the colony ship, perseverance like the cries of a dying animal. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair as the entire vessel shook and twisted around her. The experimental warp drive had malfunctioned. Instead of a smooth jump to their destination, they were tumbling through something that felt like the universe itself was trying to tear them apart. "Status report," Elena shouted over the noise. "Navigation is completely lost," Lieutenant Park yelled back from his station. "The warp field collapsed mid-jump. We're exiting somewhere, but I have no idea where." The ship lurched one final time. Then everything went still. The alarm stopped. The shaking ended. Elena found herself staring at the main view screen, and what she saw there made her blood run cold. Ships. Hundreds of ships. Thousands of ships. They filled the space around the Perseverance like a swarm of metal insects. Each one was massive, some of them the size of small moons. They were covered in strange symbols and glowing with energy that pulsed like a heartbeat. What is this?" whispered Dr. Sarah Chen, the ship's chief scientist. She had come to the bridge during the emergency, and now she stood frozen in place. Elena had no answer. The Perseverance was humanity's first interstellar colony ship. It carried 4,000 souls toward a new world, a new beginning for their species. They had expected to find an empty planet waiting for them. They had not expected to find this. The communication system crackled to life. A voice came through, speaking in a language that sounded like music mixed with mathematics. The universal translator struggled for a moment, then began to produce words. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Vylorn hegemony space. Identify yourself immediately. Failure to comply will result in your destruction." Elena looked at her crew. They looked back at her with fear in their eyes. She took a deep breath and pressed the communication button. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the colony ship Perseverance. We are humans from the planet Earth. We mean no harm. Our navigation system malfunctioned, and we arrived here by accident." There was a long silence. Elena could feel sweat forming on her forehead as she waited. Finally, the voice returned. "Humans, Earth. These designations are not in our registry. You are not a recognized species. You are not a client race. You are not a conquered people. You are nothing." The word hung in the air like a death sentence. Nothing. That was what they were to these beings. Nothing at all. "Please," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We are peaceful. We are just trying to find a new home for our people. If you could just let us go on our way." "Negative. Your vessel is now property of the Vylorn hegemony. You will be processed according to standard protocols for unregistered biological entities. Do not resist. Resistance will result in immediate termination." The communication ended. Elena sat back in her chair, her mind racing. Around her, the crew began to panic. Some cried. Others prayed. A few tried to suggest fighting back. But one look at the warships surrounding them ended that discussion quickly. The Perseverance had 12 defense cannons. The smallest ship in the alien fleet could probably destroy them with a single shot. "What do we do, Captain?" Lieutenant Park asked quietly. Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about the 4,000 people depending on her. She thought about the children in the colony section, the families who had given up everything for a chance at a new life. She thought about Earth, so far away now, completely unaware of what was happening to them. "We cooperate," she finally said. "We stay alive, and we look for opportunities." The next few hours were a nightmare. Alien ships attached themselves to the Perseverance like parasites. Strange beings in environmental suits boarded the vessel and began scanning everything. The crew was ordered to gather in the main cargo bay. Elena got her first look at the Vylorn there. They were tall, nearly 3 meters in height. Their skin was a deep purple color, and their heads were elongated, with 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. They moved with a slow, deliberate grace that suggested they had never needed to hurry in their entire existence. The Valorn administrators did not look at the humans directly. They spoke to each other as if the humans were not even there. Elena understood quickly that this was not rudeness. It was something worse. The Valorn genuinely did not consider humans worth acknowledging. Genetic scan complete, one of the Valorn announced to another. The specimens are carbon-based, oxygen-breathing. Intelligence quotient is within acceptable parameters for basic labor tasks. Recommendation: classification as pre-sapient wanderers, pending observation period. Pre-sapient, the word burned in Elena's mind. These aliens thought humans were not fully intelligent. They thought humans were somewhere between animals and real people. "Excuse me," Elena said, stepping forward. "I am the captain of this vessel. I request to speak with whoever is in charge." The Valorn administrator finally looked at her. All four of its eyes focused on Elena, and she felt like an insect being examined by a scientist. "You are the leader of this group?" the Valorn asked. "Yes, I am Captain Elena Vasquez." "Noted. Your request is denied. Pre-sapient wanderers do not have speaking rights. You will be relocated to Threshold 9 for processing. Your vessel will be impounded. Your technology will be studied. You have no further input in these matters." Elena wanted to argue. She wanted to fight, but she looked at her people, saw the fear on their faces, and knew that this was not the time. She nodded silently and stepped back. The journey to Threshold 9 took 3 days. The humans were packed into transport ships like cargo. They were given food and water, but no one spoke to them. No one explained what was happening. They were simply moved from one place to another, like objects being sorted into the correct boxes. Threshold 9 was a moon orbiting a gas giant in a system far from anything important. It was gray and cold and lifeless. The settlement there was a collection of old buildings that looked like they had been abandoned and rebuilt dozens of times over thousands of years. When the transports landed, Elena saw that they were not the only ones here. Other beings wandered the streets of the settlement. There were creatures of all shapes and sizes, some with fur, some with scales, some with features that Elena could not even describe. All of them had one thing in common: they looked broken. A Valorn official met them at the landing pad. This one was older than the others Elena had seen, with silver markings on its purple skin. "Welcome to Threshold 9, the official said without enthusiasm. "This is your new home. You will be provided with basic housing and sustenance. You will not leave this moon. You will not contact any other species. You will remain here until the hegemony determines what to do with you. Questions will not be answered. Complaints will not be heard. That is all." The official turned and left. Armed guards herded the humans toward a section of the settlement that had been prepared for them. The buildings were old and poorly maintained. The walls were cracked. The heating systems barely worked, but it was shelter, and Elena knew they had to take what they could get. The first night on Threshold 9 was the longest of Elena's life. She walked through the human settlement, checking on her people. Families huddled together in small rooms. Children cried for homes they would never see again. Engineers and scientists, the best minds humanity had sent on this mission, now sat in the dirt with nothing to do. Elena found herself standing at the edge of the settlement, looking out at the barren landscape of the moon. The gas giant hung in the sky, enormous and indifferent. She had never felt so small in her entire life. "You are the new arrivals." The voice startled her. Elena turned to find an alien standing behind her. This one was different from the Valorn. It was shorter, with blue skin and only 2 eyes that glowed faintly in the darkness. Its body was thin and bent, as if carrying a weight that never went away. "Yes," Elena said carefully, "we are humans. From Earth. I am Velnosh. I am what your people would call a guide. I help new arrivals understand this place." "You're a prisoner, too?" Velnosh made a sound that might have been a laugh. I have been here for 200 of your years. My species was once great. We had ships and cities and dreams. Then we encountered the hegemony. Now we are here, and we will be here until we fade away entirely. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Is that what happens? Species just fade away? Some do. The hegemony does not kill directly. That would require them to acknowledge that we matter. Instead, they simply ignore us. They give us just enough to survive, but not enough to thrive. Over time, hope dies. Then the will to live dies. Then the species dies. It is very efficient. Elena looked back at the human settlement. Her people were in there, scared and confused, but alive. She thought about what Velnosh was saying. She thought about the slow death that awaited them if they accepted this fate. No, she said quietly. No? No. That is not going to happen to us. We are humans. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. We do not give up. We do not fade away. Velnosh studied her for a long moment. Then the old alien leaned closer, and its voice dropped to a whisper. The hegemony has ruled this galaxy for 12,000 years. They have conquered or absorbed every species they have ever encountered. They are powerful beyond your imagination. What makes you think your kind will be any different? Elena did not have an answer, but something burned inside her, something that refused to accept defeat. She met the alien's glowing eyes and spoke with a conviction she did not entirely feel. Because we have to be. Because I am not going to let my people die on this rock. Because there has to be a way. Velnosh was silent for a long time. The gas giant turned slowly in the sky above them. Finally, the old alien spoke again. The hegemony has a weakness. One weakness that they do not even know they have. What is it? They have never fought anyone who had nothing left to lose. They have never faced a species that was already at the bottom. They do not know how to deal with creatures who have no further to fall. Velnosh began to walk away, then stopped and looked back at Elena. Your people are nothing to them. That means you have nothing to protect, nothing to risk, nothing to fear losing. In their arrogance, they have given you the one advantage that might actually matter. What advantage is that? The old alien's eyes glowed brighter for a moment. Freedom. The freedom of the truly desperate. Use it wisely, human. You may not get another chance. Velnosh disappeared into the darkness, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts. She stood there for a long time, looking up at the uncaring sky, thinking about everything she had heard. They were trapped on a prison moon at the edge of nowhere. They had no ships, no weapons, no allies. The most powerful civilization in the galaxy considered them less than animals. By every measure, their situation was hopeless. But Elena Vasquez had never been very good at accepting hopeless situations. She turned and walked back to the settlement. There was work to do. She needed to talk to her people, to organize them, to start building something from nothing. She did not know yet what that something would be. She only knew that she was not going to let humanity end in this place. The hegemony thought humans were nothing. Elena intended to show them exactly how dangerous nothing could be. 5 years had passed since humanity arrived in hegemony space. 5 years since they were dumped on Threshold 9 like garbage. 5 years since the galaxy decided they were nothing. The galaxy was about to learn that it had made a serious mistake. Marcus Chen wiped grease from his hands and examined his work. The power converter in front of him was Valoran technology, supposedly impossible for a primitive species to understand. Marcus had figured out how it worked in 3 months. He had improved its efficiency by 12% in 6 months. Now he could build one from scratch using parts that the hegemony considered junk. His repair shop was located on Station Keth 7, a massive trading hub in the outer rim of hegemony space. Officially, Marcus did not exist. There were no records of a human living on this station. There were no permits, no identification, no legal status of any kind. Unofficially, everyone knew about the human mechanic who could fix anything. Marcus was one of the drifters, the humans who had escaped from Threshold 9 over the years. It had started small. A few people hiding in cargo containers on supply ships, a handful of engineers who convinced alien traders to take them along in exchange for repair work, scientists who offered their knowledge to species willing to listen. The hegemony did not notice at first. Why would they? Humans were classified as pre-sapient wanderers. They were barely worth tracking. If a few disappeared from the quarantine moon, it simply meant fewer mouths to feed. That casual dismissal was the hegemony's first mistake. Marcus finished the power converter and set it aside. His client would arrive soon, a Kelthian merchant who had been coming to him for 2 years now. The Kelthians were one of the hegemony's subject races, conquered so long ago that they had forgotten what freedom tasted like. But they remembered how to do business, and they had learned that human work was worth paying for. A chime at the door announced the merchant's arrival. Marcus opened the door to find Sorval, a squat being covered in thick gray fur, with large dark eyes that always seemed worried. "Chen," Sorval said, using the human custom of addressing people by their family name. "Is it ready?" "Better than ready. I increased the efficiency. You will get more power with less fuel." Sorval examined the converter with the careful eye of a being who had been cheated many times in his life. After a moment, his worried expression shifted to something close to amazement. "How do you do this? This technology is 3,000 years old. No one has improved it in centuries." Marcus shrugged. "Fresh eyes. When you have been looking at something the same way for thousands of years, you stop seeing what could be different. We humans have only been looking for 5 years. Everything is new to us." This was the truth that the hegemony did not understand. They had stopped innovating because they had stopped needing to innovate. Their technology was good enough. Their systems worked well enough. Why change something that was not broken? But the humans saw everything with fresh eyes. They asked questions that no one had asked in millennia. They tried things that no one had tried because everyone knew those things would not work. Sometimes they failed, but sometimes they succeeded in ways that should have been impossible. Sorval paid for the converter and left with something rare for a Kelthian: hope. Marcus watched him go and allowed himself a small smile. Another satisfied customer. Another tiny thread in the web that humanity was weaving across the stars. His communication device buzzed. Marcus checked it and found a message in the coded language that drifters use to communicate. The message was short, but it made his heart beat faster. "Network meeting, your sector, 3 days. Elena sends regards. Elena Vasquez." Marcus had not seen the captain in 4 years, not since he left Threshold 9 hidden in a recycling container. But he had heard about her work. She had transformed the quarantine moon from a dying prison into a secret training ground. Humans who stayed there learned languages, studied captured technology, and prepared themselves for the day when they would join the Drifter network. Marcus closed his shop early that day. He had preparations to make. 3 days later, he found himself in a forgotten storage section of Station Keth 7. The hegemony had built this station 2,000 years ago and had forgotten about at least 30% of it. Humans had mapped those forgotten sections carefully. They had become meeting places, hiding spots, and emergency shelters for drifters across the outer rim. 20 humans waited in the storage bay when Marcus arrived. They came from a dozen different stations and worlds, each one with their own story of survival. There was Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had become the personal physician to a wealthy Valorn family by curing a disease their own doctors could not treat. There was James Okonkwo, who ran a translation service that connected species who had not spoken to each other in centuries. There was little Rosa Martinez, only 15 years old, who had an almost supernatural ability to learn alien languages. And there, standing at the center of the group, was Elena Vasquez. The captain had changed in 5 years. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. New lines marked her face. But her eyes were the same, burning with a determination that the hegemony had failed to break. "Thank you all for coming," Elena said. "I know the risks you took to be here. I would not have called this meeting if it was not important." She activated a holographic display. It showed a map of hegemony space, vast beyond human comprehension. Thousands of star systems, millions of worlds, trillions of beings. "This is what we are dealing with," Elena continued. "The Valorn hegemony. 12,000 years of continuous rule. They have conquered or absorbed every species they have ever encountered. Their technology is millennia ahead of ours. Their military could destroy Earth 1,000 times over without even noticing." She paused and looked at each person in the room. "And they have absolutely no idea what to do with us." A ripple of confused murmurs went through the group. Elena smiled, a thin expression without much humor in it. "Think about it. The hegemony has a system for everything. Conquered species become client races. Useful species get integrated into the economy. Dangerous species get eliminated, but humans do not fit any of their categories. We are too primitive to be useful, too scattered to be conquered, and too insignificant to be worth eliminating." "So what are we?" Marcus asked. "We are a new variable, something they have not seen in thousands of years. And that makes us dangerous in ways they cannot even imagine." Elena changed the display. Now it showed a web of connections spreading across hegemony space. Nodes marked human drifters on dozens of stations and worlds. Lines connected them to alien contacts, information networks, and hidden resources. "In 5 years, we have built this, the Drifter Network, humans scattered across the outer rim, learning everything we can, making ourselves useful to anyone who will listen. We have contacts in 14 species. We have access to technology the hegemony thinks is secure. We have information about corruption, inefficiency, and weakness that their own internal security does not know about." James Okonkwo raised his hand. "Captain, this is impressive. But what is the goal? We cannot fight them. We cannot even negotiate with them. What exactly are we working toward?" Elena nodded. "Good question. The answer is survival, not just surviving day to day, but surviving as a species with a future. And I believe I have found a way to do that." She changed the display again. This time it showed economic data, trade flows, and resource allocations across the hegemony. The hegemony is dying. Not quickly, not obviously, but dying nonetheless. Their economy has been stagnant for 2,000 years. Their technology has not advanced in 3,000. Their subject races hate them, but are too broken to resist. They are like a tree that looks healthy, but is rotting from the inside. "How does that help us?" Dr. Tanaka asked. "Because dying systems need new blood. They need innovation. They need connection. They need all the things that they have forgotten how to create for themselves. And that is exactly what we can offer." Marcus began to understand. "You want us to make ourselves useful. So useful that they cannot get rid of us. More than that, I want us to become essential. I want us to fill the gaps in their system, solve the problems they cannot solve, connect the pieces they have allowed to fall apart. I want us to become so embedded in the functioning of the hegemony that removing us would cause more damage than tolerating us." The room was silent as everyone processed this idea. It was ambitious. It was dangerous. It might also be the only chance humanity had. "This will not be quick," Elena continued. "It might take decades. It might take generations. But we have something the hegemony does not have. We know how to struggle. We know how to start from nothing and build something. We know how to survive when everything is against us. That is what being human means." Rosa Martinez spoke up, her young voice steady despite the weight of the situation. What do you need us to do? Elena smiled, and this time there was warmth in it. Keep doing what you are doing. Learn everything you can. Help everyone who will accept your help. Make friends, make connections, make yourself valuable, and report back to the network. Share what you know so others can use it. She looked around the room one more time. We are going to show the galaxy what humans are capable of, not through war, not through conquest, but through something they have never encountered before: genuine cooperation. We are going to become the most helpful species in the hegemony. And by the time they realize what we have done, it will be too late to stop us. The meeting lasted several more hours. Plans were discussed, resources were shared, and connections were strengthened. When it was finally over, the drifters slipped away one by one, returning to their hidden lives across the stars. Marcus was the last to leave. Elena stopped him at the door. You have done well, Marcus. The reports from Keth 7 are impressive. Your repair shop has made connections we never expected. I just fixed things, Captain. It is not complicated. Elena shook her head. It is more than that. You treat your clients like people. You listen to them, learn about their lives, remember their names. Do you know how rare that is in the hegemony? Most species have forgotten how to connect with each other. The system has ground that out of them. Marcus thought about Sorval, the worried Kelthian merchant who always looked surprised when Marcus asked about his family. He thought about the Valoran engineer who had quietly started coming to him for repairs that she could easily do herself, just because she enjoyed having someone to talk to. I guess I never thought about it that way. That is the point. You do it naturally. We all do. Humans evolved as social creatures. We build communities wherever we go. We make friends out of strangers. It is in our nature. Elena put her hand on his shoulder. That is our real weapon, Marcus. Not technology, not military power, but the simple ability to connect. The hegemony has spent 12,000 years breaking those connections between species. We are going to spend the next 100 years rebuilding them. She stepped back and gave him a formal nod. Good luck, Drifter. The network is counting on you. Marcus returned to his shop that night with a new sense of purpose. He was not just a mechanic hiding from the authorities. He was part of something larger, something that might actually matter. The next morning, he opened his doors and welcomed his first customer of the day. It was a young Valorn, barely out of adolescence by their standards, with a broken device that his family's automated systems could not repair. Can you fix this? The young alien asked nervously. Valorn were not supposed to ask primitives for help. It was embarrassing. Marcus smiled warmly. Let me take a look. And while I am working, why do not you tell me about yourself? What brings a Valorn all the way out to the outer rim? The young alien hesitated, then began to talk. Marcus listened carefully, asked questions, and slowly drew out a story of family pressure, unfulfilled dreams, and quiet loneliness. By the time the repair was finished, Marcus had made a new friend. Another thread in the web, another small step toward a future where humanity would no longer be nothing. The hegemony did not notice. They never noticed the small things. That was their second mistake. Ambassador Ketharava had served the Valorn hegemony for 300 years. She had negotiated treaties with stubborn client races. She had managed rebellions on a dozen worlds. She had solved problems that would have destroyed lesser administrators. Nothing surprised her anymore. Until she was assigned to investigate the human infestation, her superiors had given her the task almost as a joke. The humans were pre-sapient wanderers, barely worth acknowledging. Some of them had escaped from Threshold 9 over the years and scattered across the outer rim. They were causing minor problems, nothing significant. Keith Rava was supposed to assess the situation and recommend a solution. She expected to find primitive creatures struggling to survive in a galaxy they could not understand. She expected to write a short report suggesting increased monitoring and perhaps some minor enforcement actions. She did not expect to find what she actually found. The first sign that something was unusual came on Station Vet 12, a mining hub in the Outer Territories. Kethurava arrived to investigate reports of humans living there illegally. She found them easily enough. A small community of 30 humans had established themselves in an abandoned section of the station. What surprised her was how they were living. The humans had not simply survived, they had thrived. Their section of the station was cleaner than the rest, better organized, more efficiently managed. They had repaired systems that the station's official maintenance crews had given up on. They had created a small market where they traded services with other species. Kethrava spoke with the station's administrator, a bored Valorn who clearly considered this posting a punishment. The humans, yes, they are here, technically illegal, of course, but they cause no problems. Actually, they solve problems. Half of my maintenance requests go to them now. They fix things faster and cheaper than our own systems. You use pre-sapient wanderers for official station maintenance? Kethrava asked, unable to hide her disbelief. The administrator shrugged, a gesture he had picked up from somewhere. They get the job done. Is that not what matters? Kethrava moved on to other stations, other worlds. Everywhere she went, she found the same pattern. Humans living in the cracks of hegemony infrastructure, making themselves useful in ways that the official systems could not match. On Station Keth 7, she found a human running a repair shop that had become essential to the local economy. On the colony world of Reshtal, she found humans working as translators and mediators between species that had not communicated in centuries. On the trade hub of Vormesh, she found humans running an information service that connected merchants across a dozen systems. The more Kethrava investigated, the more disturbed she became. These humans were not struggling to survive. They were building something, a network of connections that spread across the outer rim, like the roots of a tree, invisible beneath the surface, but growing stronger every day. She requested a meeting with the human leader on Threshold 9. To her surprise, the request was granted within hours. Elena Vasquez met her at the edge of the human settlement on the quarantine moon. The human female was small by Vylorn standards, barely reaching Kethrava's chest, but there was something in her eyes that made the ambassador uneasy. Intelligence, calculation, a complete lack of fear. Ambassador Kethrava, Elena said calmly, welcome to Threshold 9. I have been expecting you. You have been expecting me? We pay attention to what happens in hegemony space. When a mid-level ambassador starts visiting every station where humans live, it is not hard to guess why. Kethrava felt a chill run through her. These creatures had been tracking her movements. They had intelligence networks that reached into hegemony communications. How was that possible for a pre-sapient species? Your people have spread far beyond this moon, Kethrava said. That is a violation of your quarantine status. Yes, it is. What do you intend to do about it? The directness of the question caught Kethrava off guard. Most species, especially conquered ones, would have made excuses or begged for mercy. This human simply asked what came next as if they were negotiating a business deal. I have not decided yet. That depends on what I learned from this conversation. Elena nodded and gestured for Kethrava to follow her. Then let me show you something. They walked through the human settlement. Kethrava had expected to see misery and desperation. Instead, she saw organization. Humans worked in groups, building things, teaching each other, practicing skills. Children attended classes where they learned alien languages and technologies. Adults trained in trades that would be useful across the galaxy. Threshold 9 is not a prison for us, Elena explained. It is a school. Every human who stays here learns what they need to survive in the hegemony. Languages, technology, culture, economics. When they are ready, they join the Drifter Network. The Drifter Network, Kethrava repeated. You admit it exists? Why would I deny it? You have already figured out most of it. I would rather show you the truth than let you imagine something worse. They stopped at a building near the center of the settlement. Inside, dozens of humans worked at computer terminals, analyzing data and communicating with contacts across the stars. This is our coordination center, Elena said. We track everything that happens in the outer rim. Trade flows, political changes, social tensions. We probably know more about what is happening in your outer territories than your own internal security does. Kethrava stared at the screens, seeing data that should have been impossible for these primitives to access. How did you build this? Your species has only been in our space for 10 years. 11 years, actually, and we built it the same way we have built everything else, by being useful. We help species that the hegemony has neglected. We solve problems that your bureaucracy cannot be bothered to address. In return, they share information, provide access, look the other way when we need them to. This is subversion of hegemony authority. Elena's expression did not change. Is it? We have not broken any laws. We have not attacked anyone. We have not encouraged rebellion. We have simply made ourselves helpful. Is that a crime? Kethrava had no answer. Technically, the humans had done nothing that violated hegemony law. They had found loopholes, gray areas, undefined spaces where the rules did not quite apply. They had built an entire network in the gaps that hegemony bureaucracy had created and forgotten about. What do you want? Kethrava finally asked. What is the purpose of all this? Elena looked at her directly, and for the first time, the ambassador saw something vulnerable in the human's eyes. We want to survive, not just exist, but actually survive. We want our children to have a future. We want to be recognized as people, not as presapient wanderers who are not worth acknowledging. We want a place in this galaxy. The hegemony does not give places. Races earn their position through service or lose it through conquest. I know. That is exactly what we are trying to do. We are trying to earn a place by being so useful that you cannot afford to get rid of us. We are trying to become essential. Kethrava was silent for a long moment. She thought about everything she had seen on her investigation. The repair shops and translation services, the information networks and trading connections, the quiet, patient building of relationships across dozens of worlds. This is a dangerous game you are playing, she finally said. If the High Council perceives you as a threat, they will order your extermination. They have done it before to species far more powerful than yours. I know. That is why I asked to meet with you. With me? Why? Elena smiled, a small expression that somehow made her look both younger and older at the same time. Because I have been watching you too, Ambassador. I know your record. I know that you have argued for reform within the hegemony. I know that you have been passed over for promotion 3 times because your superiors consider you too moderate. I know that you believe the current system is unsustainable. Kethrava felt exposed in a way she had never experienced before. This human had seen through her, understood her in ways that her own colleagues did not. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that we might have common interests. You want to reform the hegemony before it collapses under its own weight. We want to survive and eventually be recognized. Perhaps we can help each other. That is a treasonous suggestion, is it? I am not asking you to betray anyone. I am asking you to consider what is best for the hegemony in the long term. Is it better to exterminate us and lose everything we can offer? Or is it better to find a way to integrate us? Use our abilities? Let us contribute to a system that desperately needs new ideas? Kethrava looked around the coordination center again. She thought about the dying economy, the stagnant technology, the subject races who hated their rulers, but had forgotten how to hope for anything better. You are asking me to take an enormous risk. Yes, we take risks every day. It is how we survive. The ambassador made a decision that would change the course of galactic history, though she did not know it at the time. I will not report the full extent of what I have found here. I will recommend increased monitoring, but no immediate action. That will buy you time. Elena's expression softened with relief. Thank you, Ambassador. Do not thank me yet. I have conditions. You will share information with me. Everything you learn about corruption, inefficiency, and threats to stability in the Outer Rim. I will use that information to build support for reform within the administration. Agreed. And you will be careful. If you become too visible, too ambitious, I will not be able to protect you. The High Council is suspicious of anything new. You must grow slowly, quietly, until you are too embedded to remove. We understand patience, Ambassador. We have been practicing it for 11 years. Kethrava turned to leave, then stopped at the door. One more thing. Why do you trust me? How do you know I will not simply use this information against you? Elena's answer was simple. Because we have studied you. We know that you care more about the future of the hegemony than about your own career. We know that you see the same problems we see, and we know that you are smart enough to recognize an opportunity when it is offered. You are remarkably confident for a species that was classified as pre-sapient 10 years ago. We are remarkably good at learning. It is how we survived on our own world long before we came here. Kethrava left Threshold 9 with more questions than answers, but she kept her word. Her report to the High Council recommended continued monitoring, but no immediate action against the human population. The humans were insignificant, she wrote. They were no threat. They were simply doing what primitives do, struggling to survive in a galaxy too large for them. The Council accepted her assessment without much discussion. They had bigger problems to worry about: border disputes with rival powers, internal corruption scandals, economic stagnation. A few thousand scattered humans were not worth their attention. That was the hegemony's third mistake. 6 months later, Kethrava received her first intelligence report from the Drifter Network. It detailed a corruption scheme involving 3 High Council members and several trillion credits of misappropriated funds. She used that information carefully, sharing it with allies, building support for her reform agenda. No one asked where she had gotten the intelligence. They were too busy being shocked by its accuracy. The partnership had begun. Somewhere on Threshold 9, Elena Vasquez allowed herself a rare moment of celebration. The first phase of her plan was complete. They had survived. They had grown. And now they had an ally inside the hegemony itself. The galaxy still thought humans were nothing. The galaxy was about to learn how wrong it had been. The message reached Elena Vasquez at midnight, delivered through 3 separate relay points to avoid detection. It was from Kethrava, and it contained 2 words that changed everything. They know. Elena read the full report that followed with growing dread. Someone in the High Council had finally paid attention to the human situation. They had connected the dots between the Drifter Network, the spreading influence of human advisors across the Outer Rim, and the increasing number of subject races who spoke positively about the strange new species. The conclusion was inevitable. The hegemony was dispatching a pacification fleet to Threshold 9. Officially, the mission was to contain a disease outbreak on the quarantine moon. Unofficially, everyone knew what pacification fleets did. They had eliminated 3 species in the last 1,000 years, each time with the same cover story: disease, containment failure, unfortunate necessity. Elena had 2 weeks before the fleet arrived. She called an emergency meeting of all sector leaders in the Drifter Network. They gathered virtually, faces appearing on screens across a dozen systems. Marcus Chen from Station Keth 7. Dr. Tanaka from her position with the Vylorn family. James Okonkwo from his translation network. Rosa Martinez, now 20 years old and running intelligence operations across 3 sectors, and dozens of others, the scattered children of humanity who had built something remarkable from nothing. You all know the situation, Elena said. The pacification fleet will arrive at Threshold 9 in 14 days. There are still 800 humans on the moon, including our training programs and coordination center. If we do nothing, they will all die. Can we evacuate them? Marcus asked. Not all of them. We could save maybe 200 if we started moving people immediately. But that would mean abandoning our infrastructure, our records, and everyone we cannot fit on the available transports. What about fighting? A young voice asked. It was David Kowalski, a former military officer who had escaped Threshold 9 5 years ago. We have people on dozens of stations. If we coordinated an attack, we would die, Elena said flatly. The pacification fleet has 40 warships. We have no warships. We have no weapons that could scratch their hulls. Military resistance is not an option. Silence fell over the meeting. Elena could see the fear on their faces, the desperation. Everything they had built over 15 years was about to be destroyed. So what do we do? Dr. Tanaka asked quietly. Elena took a deep breath. We use the only weapons we have: information, connections, and the arrogance of the hegemony itself. She began outlining a plan that was either brilliant or insane. She was not sure which. The operation was called Cascade. It had 3 parts. First, the Drifter network would create disruptions across the Outer Rim. Nothing violent, nothing that could be blamed on humans, but enough to cause problems for hegemony logistics. Supply shipments would be misdirected. Communication relays would develop mysterious glitches. Bureaucratic paperwork would get lost in endless loops of jurisdictional disputes. The goal was not to stop the pacification fleet. That was impossible. The goal was to slow it down, create delays, buy time. Second, Elena would reach out to every species that humans had helped over the years. Kelthians, Vornash, Rithali, and a dozen others. She would not ask them to fight. She would ask them to offer sanctuary, to claim that any humans in their territories were essential workers who could not be removed without damaging local economies. The hegemony could force compliance, but it would take time. Every species that resisted, even passively, would add days to the timeline. Third, and most importantly, Marcus Chen would lead a team to broadcast humanity's story across the hegemony. Not propaganda, not demands, just the truth. Who humans were, what they had done, how they had survived. We cannot win by force, Elena explained. We can only win by changing how the galaxy sees us. Right now, we are pre-sapient wanderers, animals that got above their station. We need to become people in their eyes, real people with stories and dreams and value. Will that actually work? Rosa asked doubtfully. I do not know, but it is the only chance we have. The network spent the next week preparing. Drifters across the Outer Rim received their assignments and began moving into position. Elena coordinated everything from Threshold 9, sleeping only a few hours a night, pushing herself beyond exhaustion. Kethrova helped where she could, feeding them information about the fleet's movements and the political situation in the capital. The ambassador was taking enormous risks. If her involvement was discovered, she would face execution for treason. But she had committed herself to this path, and she would not turn back now. 7 days before the fleet was scheduled to arrive, Cascade began. On Station Veth 12, a human technician named Sarah Park triggered a series of errors in the station's navigation beacons. Ships heading for the pacification fleet's supply depot were misdirected to the wrong system. It would take 3 days to sort out the confusion. On the trade hub of Vormesh, James Okonkwo used his translation network to spread rumors about a contaminated fuel shipment. 6 tanker ships refused to leave port until the fuel was tested. The test came back clean, but the delay cost 2 more days. In the capital itself, Keith Rava's reform faction raised questions about the pacification fleet's mission authorization. The paperwork had been rushed through without proper review. A committee would need to investigate. Another day of delay. Each disruption was small. Each one was explainable as accident, incompetence, or routine bureaucracy. But together they added up. The fleet that should have reached Threshold 9 in 14 days was now looking at 21 days. Meanwhile, Marcus led his broadcast team to a hidden transmission station that the drifters had built over 5 years. It was powered by salvaged equipment and hidden inside an asteroid field where hegemony sensors rarely scan. The broadcast began simply. Marcus appeared on screen, looking directly at the camera, speaking in perfect Valorn. "My name is Marcus Chen. I am a human. 15 years ago, my species arrived in this galaxy by accident. We were classified as pre-sapient wanderers, locked away on a quarantine moon, and told that we were nothing." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We have spent 15 years proving that we are something. We have learned your languages. We have studied your technologies. We have made friends among your subject races. We have solved problems that your systems could not solve. We have done all of this while being told that we do not matter." The broadcast included testimonials from aliens who had worked with humans. Sorval the Keltian merchant spoke about the human mechanic who treated him with respect. A Valorn engineer described the human technician who became her closest friend. A Rathali child talked about the human teacher who helped her learn to read. "We are not asking for power," Marcus continued. "We are not asking for territory. We are asking only to be seen, to be recognized as people who have something to offer, to be given a chance to contribute to a galaxy that has decided we are worthless." The broadcast ended with a simple question. What would you do if you had nothing left to lose? The message spread faster than anyone expected. The Drifter network pushed it through underground channels. Subject races who hated the hegemony shared it among themselves. Even some Valorn, young ones who had grown bored with the stagnant empire, began passing it along. Within 5 days, the story of the humans had reached every corner of the Outer Rim. The pacification fleet finally arrived at Threshold 9 on day 23. Their commander, Admiral Vorkath, was furious about the delays and ready to complete his mission quickly. He found an empty moon. The 800 humans who had been living there were gone. Evacuated over the previous week to a dozen different locations. The coordination center had been dismantled and its data distributed across the network. The training facilities had been converted back to ordinary buildings. All that remained was a single message, written in perfect Valorn and displayed on every screen in the settlement. "We were here, we learned, we grew, we left. You cannot destroy what has already spread beyond your reach." Admiral Vorkath searched the moon for 3 days. He found nothing useful. His orders were to eliminate the human population on Threshold 9, but there was no population to eliminate. He could not destroy an idea, and the idea of humanity had already escaped. The Admiral faced a difficult choice. He could expand his mission, hunting down humans across the Outer Rim. But that would require authorizations he did not have, resources that were already stretched thin, and time that the hegemony could not spare for such a minor threat. Or he could report success and go home. He chose the second option. His report stated that the disease outbreak on Threshold 9 had been contained and the affected population had been processed. It was technically true from a certain point of view. The population had been processed, just not in the way the High Council intended. But the story did not end there. Across the Outer Rim, species who had seen the human broadcast began asking questions. They began talking to each other in ways they had not talked in centuries. The humans had shown them something that the hegemony had tried to make them forget: hope. The idea that a species could start from nothing and build something meaningful. The possibility that the galaxy might be more than an eternal hierarchy where nothing ever changed. 2 days after the pacification fleet withdrew, the High Council received a petition. 17 species requested a formal hearing to discuss the status of humans in hegemony space. The petition was unprecedented. Subject races did not make requests of the High Council, but they were making one now. Kethrava delivered the news to Elena through their secure channel. The Council is furious. They want to reject the petition and punish the species who signed it. But some of my allies are arguing that rejection would cause more problems than acceptance. The petition has too much support. What does that mean for us? Elena asked. It means you are going to get what you wanted. The Council has agreed to summon a human representative for a formal hearing. They want to deal with this issue once and for all. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of everything they had accomplished and everything that still remained to be done. When? 10 days. They want you specifically, the leader of the Drifter Network, the one who has been causing them so much trouble. I will be there. Elena, you understand what this is? They are not summoning you for a friendly conversation. They want to make an example of you, to show the galaxy what happens to species that challenge hegemony authority. I know, but I am going anyway. Why? Elena thought about all the humans scattered across the stars, the families on Threshold 9 who had been evacuated just in time, the drifters who had risked everything for a chance at a future, the children who had grown up in this galaxy never knowing their homeworld, but still carrying the spirit of humanity with them. Because someone has to. Because we did not come this far to hide in the shadows forever. Because the only way to prove that we are people is to stand up and be seen. Kethrava was silent for a long moment. You are either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. Is that not what being human means? The ambassador laughed, a sound that Elena had never heard from a Valorn before. Perhaps it is. Good luck, human. You are going to need it. Elena ended the communication and began preparing for the most important moment in human history. In 10 days, she would walk into the heart of the Valorn hegemony and speak for her entire species. She was terrified. She was ready. The Hall of 12 Stars was the most sacred place in the Valorn hegemony. For 12,000 years, the High Council had gathered here to decide the fate of empires, species, and worlds. The chamber was designed to intimidate. Massive columns rose toward a ceiling lost in darkness. Holographic displays showed the vastness of hegemony territory, and at the center of everything sat the 12 most powerful beings in the galaxy. Elena Vasquez walked into this hall alone. She was wearing simple human clothes, nothing fancy or formal. Her gray hair was pulled back from her face. Her hands were empty. She carried no weapons, no technology, no tools of any kind. The guards had searched her 3 times before allowing her to enter. She looked small in this massive space. The council members towered above her on their elevated platforms, their purple skin marked with the silver lines of age and authority. Their 4 eyes watched her with expressions that ranged from contempt to curiosity. The eldest council member, a being named Vordanok who had ruled for 2,000 years, spoke first. You are the human representative? The one who calls herself Elena Vasquez? Yes, Elder, I am. You stand accused of subversion against hegemony authority. Your species has spread through our territory without permission. You have built networks of influence among our subject races. You have disrupted our operations and evaded our security forces. What do you have to say in defense of these actions? Elena took a deep breath. She had prepared for this moment for weeks. But no amount of preparation could truly ready someone for standing before the rulers of the galaxy. Elder, I do not deny these facts. My species has spread across the outer rim. We have built networks and made connections. We have done everything you have said and more, but I do not believe these actions require defense. A murmur went through the council. No one spoke to them like this. Species that appeared before the High Council begged for mercy offered submission, promised obedience. They did not calmly state that their actions needed no defense. You do not believe subversion requires defense? Vortinok's voice carried a dangerous edge. I believe that survival does not require defense. My species was dumped on a quarantine moon and told we were nothing. We were given no rights, no representation, no path to integration. What were we supposed to do? Wait quietly until we faded away? That is the way of things. Species prove their worth or they disappear. And how were we supposed to prove our worth when no one would even look at us? When the very act of speaking to a Valorn was considered above our station, you created a system where we could not succeed and then blamed us for finding ways to survive outside that system. Council member Kethash leaned forward, her four eyes narrowing. You dare to criticize the hegemony? An empire that has endured for 12,000 years. Elena met her gaze without flinching. I am not criticizing the hegemony. I am describing it. You have built something remarkable, something that has brought stability to the galaxy for millennia. But stability without growth is stagnation. Order without change is decay. She gestured at the vast holographic map of hegemony space. Your economy has not grown in 2,000 years. Your technology has not advanced in 3,000. Your subject races serve you out of fear, not loyalty. Half your outer territories are barely governed because you do not have enough administrators who care about their work. You are dying, elders. Not quickly, not obviously, but you are dying, and you have forgotten how to stop it. The chamber fell silent. Elena could feel the weight of 12 ancient beings staring at her, trying to decide if she was insane, brave, or simply too ignorant to understand her situation. Vortinok spoke again, his voice cold. And you believe that humans, a species we had never heard of until 15 years ago, can solve problems that have confounded us for millennia? No, we cannot solve your problems. Only you can solve your problems. But we can help. We can offer things that you have forgotten how to create, such as connection, innovation, hope. Elena stepped forward, breaking protocol, moving closer to the council platforms. Humans evolved on a harsh world where survival was never guaranteed. We learned to adapt, to change, to try new things even when everyone said they would not work. We learned to build communities, to cooperate across differences, to help strangers because that help might save us tomorrow. These are not weaknesses. They are strengths that you have lost. She pointed to the map. In 15 years, we have built relationships with dozens of species in your outer rim. Species that had not spoken to each other in centuries are now trading, cooperating, building things together. Not because we forced them, but because we listened to them. We treated them like people instead of problems to be managed. Kethrava was watching from the observer's gallery, her face carefully neutral. Elena knew she was taking an enormous risk, but there was no point in being timid now. You want to exterminate us? You have the power to do it. Your fleets could hunt down every human in the galaxy and destroy us completely. But I want you to consider what you would lose. And what would we lose? Vortinok asked. Everything we have built, every connection we have made, every innovation we have inspired, every species that has started to remember what hope feels like. You can kill us, but you cannot kill the idea of us. The idea that things can be different. The idea that the galaxy does not have to be frozen in eternal hierarchy. That idea is already spreading, and it will not stop spreading just because we are gone. Elena paused, gathering herself for the final part of her argument. I am offering you a choice, elders. You can destroy us and prove to the galaxy that the hegemony fears change, that you are so brittle, so fragile, that a few thousand scattered humans are too dangerous to tolerate. That message will spread to every subject race in your territory, and some of them will start to wonder what else you are afraid of. Or you can use us. Accept us as a legitimate species with a role in your system. Let us do what we do best. Connect, innovate, adapt. Let us be the chaos that keeps your empire from freezing solid. We will never be powerful enough to threaten you, but we might be useful enough to save you. The council deliberated for a long time. Elena stood in the center of the hall, alone and exposed, while 12 ancient beings decided the fate of her species. Minutes passed, then hours. The guards offered her water, which she accepted. They offered her a chair, which she declined. She would stand until this was over. Finally, after 3 days of deliberation, the council reached a decision. Vortinok delivered the verdict in a voice that echoed through the vast chamber. The High Council has considered the human situation. We have weighed the evidence, examined the risks, and debated the alternatives. Our decision is as follows. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. Everything came down to this moment. Humanity will not be exterminated. However, humanity will not be granted full citizenship or equal status within the hegemony. These privileges must be earned over time. Elena felt a wave of relief wash over her, but Vortinok was not finished. Humanity is hereby classified as a transitional species. This is a new category, created specifically for your kind. You will have limited rights to travel and trade within hegemony space. You will have limited rights to establish communities on approved worlds. You will have representation in administrative matters affecting your people. The elder paused. You will also have obligations. Humans will be expected to contribute to the stability and prosperity of the hegemony. Your skills in connection and adaptation will be put to use. Failure to meet these obligations will result in the removal of your transitional status. He leaned forward, his 4 eyes fixed on Elena. This is not victory, human. This is probation. We are giving you a chance to prove that you are worth keeping. Use it wisely. Elena bowed her head, a gesture of respect that she had learned from studying Valoran culture. Thank you, Elder. We will not waste this opportunity. She turned to leave, but Vortinok's voice stopped her. One more thing, human. The petition that brought you here was signed by 17 species. Species that should have known better than to involve themselves in human affairs. We have decided not to punish them, not because we approve of their actions, but because punishing them now would only prove your point about fear. His eyes narrowed. But we are watching. We will always be watching. Remember that. Elena walked out of the Hall of 12 Stars with her head held high. She had done it. Not everything she had hoped for, but more than anyone thought possible. Humanity had a place in the galaxy now. A small place, an uncertain place, but a place nonetheless. Ketharava met her outside the chamber. The ambassador's expression was as controlled as always, but Elena could see something that might have been respect in her eyes. That was either the bravest or the most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. Maybe both, Elena said with a tired smile. The council will not forget what you said. They will test you constantly, looking for weakness, waiting for you to fail. I know, but we are very good at not failing. It is what humans do. 20 years passed. The galaxy changed slowly. As galaxies do, but it changed. Human advisors appeared in the courts of a dozen species, offering counsel and connection. Human traders built networks that linked worlds which had forgotten they were neighbors. Human engineers quietly revolutionized fields that the hegemony had declared complete centuries ago. On Threshold 9, now renamed First Step, a memorial stood at the center of what had once been the human settlement. It was a simple structure, a pillar of stone, with names carved into its surface. The names of everyone who had arrived on the colony ship Perseverance all those years ago. The inscription at the base read, We came as underdogs, we stayed as neighbors, we will leave as equals. Give us time. Ketharava visited the memorial on the 20th anniversary of the High Council hearing. She was a council member herself now, the first reformist to hold such a position in centuries. The changes she had pushed for were small, incremental, but real, and much of her success had been built on the foundations that humans had helped create. Her aide walked beside her, a young human named Thomas Park. He was the grandson of the Lieutenant Park, who had served on the Perseverance. 3 generations of humans in the galaxy now. 3 generations of survivors. Ambassador, Thomas said, using the title she had earned, do you ever regret helping us? Back at the beginning, when everything was uncertain? Kethrava considered the question carefully. She had risked everything on a species that everyone said was worthless. She had bet her career, her reputation, her life on creatures that the rest of the galaxy dismissed as pre-sapient wanderers. No, she finally said. I do not regret it. You change things. Not dramatically, not overnight, but genuinely. The hegemony is different because of humans. Better in ways that matter. We are still classified as a transitional species. We still do not have full rights. True, but you have something more important. You have influence. You have connections. You have the respect of dozens of species who remember what you did for them. In another 20 years, or 50, or 100, your status will change. The hegemony will have no choice but to recognize you as equals. Not because you conquered anything, but because you made yourselves essential. Thomas smiled. Captain Vasquez always said that was the plan. Is she still alive? She is. 93 years old and still running the Drifter network. She says she will die when she is sure humanity's future is secure. At this rate, she might live forever. Kethrava made a sound that humans had taught her was called laughter. I believe she might. They stood in silence for a moment, looking at the memorial and the names carved into the stone. So many humans had struggled and sacrificed to reach this point. So many had died without seeing the results of their work. But they had passed something on to the next generation, and that generation had passed it on again. Thomas, Ketharava said eventually, do you believe your species will achieve full equality someday? The young human looked at her with eyes that carried the same quiet determination Elena had shown all those years ago. Ambassador, we crossed interstellar space in a ship held together with hope and spare parts. We wandered into the most powerful empire in the galaxy and refused to disappear. We turned being nothing into something the entire hegemony cannot ignore. Equality is not a question of if for us. It is just a matter of when. Ketharava nodded slowly. After 20 years of working with humans, she understood something about them that most Vylorns still did not grasp. They never stopped. They never gave up. They took every setback as a challenge and every failure as a lesson. They supported each other across distances that should have made community impossible. They made friends out of enemies and opportunities out of disasters. They were small and weak and impossibly stubborn, and they were slowly, patiently, inevitably changing everything. Perhaps you are right, Kethrava said. Perhaps it is just a matter of time. She looked up at the gas giant hanging in the sky, the same view that Elena had seen on her first night on this moon. So much had changed since then. So much still remained to change. Come, she said to Thomas, we have work to do. The galaxy will not reform itself. They walked back toward the settlement together, human and Vylorn, 2 species that should never have been allies but somehow were. Above them, the stars stretched out in all directions, vast and indifferent and full of possibilities. Humanity had wandered into a galactic power as underdogs with nothing. They were leaving as something much more, and they were just getting started.